I saw Tom's car in the garage, so I know he's here. I didn't see Bill's car in the garage. But okay, well, why don't we go ahead and get started? Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Trade, Commerce, and Tourism Committee. It's Wednesday, February 3rd, the day after Groundhog Day. What did the groundhog say yesterday, by the way? More winter. Yeah, I heard he tweeted it. That groundhog is just amazing what they can train them to do. Okay, so why don't we go start with item number 1.
Item 1 is continued consideration of the Harbor Department's monthly status reports, numbers 1, 2, and 3, relative to the possible operation of a shipyard facility at the former site of the Southwest Marine Shipyard at the Port of Los Angeles. Also, consideration of the Harbor Department's response to Gamble Industries' proposals for construction of a shipyard facility at this site, all in connection with the Harbor Department's main channel deepening project.
Actually, what I thought I would do is have public comment first, so we could all listen to it, and then it might be something you might even, think about responding to. And I know there's a couple of people that had to leave, so why don't we do public comment on this? By the way, everybody, this is the just our status update on the Gamble Industries proposal to build a shipyard at the Port of Los Angeles, and part of what we asked for last time was just for port staff to come back and give us a status update on how it's going, some of the concerns and issues that are still swirling around there as we continue to go forward and look at this proposal. So why don't we have public comment, and then I'll have our esteemed Dr. Nats come up and give us the status of the negotiation.
Public comment or more if they need it?
Yeah, let's do 1 minute.
Yeah.
How about 1 minute public comment for each one, if that's okay? And I'll certainly give you more if you need more. Okay, Richardlauson, Bob Stein, and Ron McAleer. Okay, well, why don't we start with those? Oh, we have 4 microphones, and Alan Lurchbacher. Why don't we start with you 4? Come on up. Why don't you come on up so you can be ready to roll. Rock and roll. Okay. Richardlauson.
Good morning. Chairperson Hahn. I'm Richardlauson with the LA and Orange County Building and Construction Trades Council, and I'm here this morning to implore the committee, the city council, and the port representatives to move this project forward. We have been working on the possibility of the Southwest Marine facility being taken over by Gamble Industries, Mr. Stein's group, and work closely with them, especially at the beginning of the discussions. And we see that the port is working with Mr. Stein to work out the issues, but we implore all of you to work out the issues as quickly as possible. The jobs are vital to the city. We know the city council is dealing with layoffs right now. Part of the reason is we don't have enough people working in the city right now, with unemployment levels at record highs for, at least in my lifetime. It's imperative that the port work closely with Mr. Stein's group to try to resolve this. I just wanted to take a moment to let you know who's here today, working people that are supporting this effort to create new jobs. If you'll all stand up for a minute that are here with the building trade supporting this. We want to build it. We want a possibility of doing a contract with the new facility to create jobs under a good union contract as well. So if anything that can be done to move this forward, working closely with Mr. Stein would be appreciated.
What are some of the work that's included in some of these building trades folks?
Well, electricians are here, iron workers, operating engineers, pipe trades, heat and frost insulators. Who else? Did I miss anybody?
Oh, you missed. It looks like the offensive and defensive line for the Colts and the Saints.
You hike the ball, they'll open up the line for us. So, all right. Thank you very much for the opportunity to support this great idea and hopefully a great project. Thank you.
Thank you.
When they're not on the NFL, they're going to be working for us in the summers.
You got it.
Okay, Bob Stein.
Thank you. At the last TC, I might need a little more than a minute. At the last TC, I'd like to read my comments because it's going to go faster. At the last TCT meeting about a month ago, Dr. Nass eloquently spoke about how the port had been collaborating with Gamble and how this resulted in the submittal of 2 key reports. At that time, she spoke. The port had in its possession these reports for about 2 weeks. The reports were the submittals of the engineering case study and the market feasibility study. These were serious documents totaling many hundreds of pages and representing thousands of hours of labor by some of the most outstanding experts in the country, and their endeavors consumed a significant amount of financial resources. The reports support 2 of the mandated requirements of the MOU. The first mandated report, the engineering study, supported the conclusion that a vertical containment could be created, engineering-wise, cost-wise, and that was constructible and seismically sound, that would contain the amount of dredge spoils necessary, 80,000 cubic yards plus the estimated in the slip 46,000 cubic yards. It was also required by the MOU that this vertical containment allow the preservation of as much open water to allow a functioning shipyard to operate at the site. The second mandated report, the market study, was to prove the market feasibility for a shipyard of the type and size that we were proposing, that would allow the effective use of the closed Southwest Marine facility, which had been on the site as a shipyard continuously in operation in San Pedro in the Port of L.A. for over 90 years. The market study prepared by MTLA and Cosmo Companies was prepared on the most conservative basis possible, and overwhelmingly, I repeat, overwhelmingly and unconditionally support the market for a shipyard at this location. We were told by Dr. Natz at the EIR hearings that this did not exist, and she was wrong. At the last TCT meeting, the port was cautioned by this committee to be proactive and collaborative with Gamble in the process of implementing the MOU. It was mentioned that the shipyard was supported by the City Council, and the public and everyone wants to see this happen, including the consumers of our products. And we will bring sorely needed jobs back to L.A. I left the meeting feeling very pleased and optimistic. And why shouldn't I have felt that way? The port had our reports for about 2 weeks, and we had not heard a peep about the content of the reports from any port staff. And Dr. Natz did not mention anything negative about them in her speech. After all, how long does it take to read a couple of executive summaries? Mm-hmm. They had problems. We would have expected to have heard about them. I really felt that we had turned the corner and we were perhaps at a tipping point in the project. Of course, I assumed, based on my knowledge of our presentation, that the tipping point was in the right direction. Well, I was mistaken. After the last TCT meeting, we had little to no contact with the port until about almost a month later in late January. The port hastily noticed us at the end of a Friday afternoon that on January 25th, the subsequent Monday morning, without benefit of any agenda, that that they were calling a meeting. At this meeting, we were verbally presented with substantially the points that Dr. Natz wrote to us in her letter dated January 26th that was hand-delivered on January 25th. I believe that you have a copy of this letter. The letter outlined several reasons why our reports failed to meet the MOU objectives and painted a dim picture as to why the project can't proceed. I'm not going to go into that,
Okay,
but
good.
so from the period of the submittal of the report some 6 weeks prior to January 25th, there was absolutely no communication from the port, no letters, phone calls, nothing about the content of the reports. In essence, no attempt to collaborate with Gamble, no attempt to inform us of that COLA had problems with our submittal. We have a different point of view regarding the report, and we welcome this meeting to help set the record straight and to make a few suggestions as to how this process can be put back on track, leading to the successful conclusion of bringing back a goodly number of jobs to Los Angeles. Council members, this is all about jobs, all about putting an unused valuable asset back into useful service. Let me remind you, San Diego County has 80,000 jobs in this industry.
Yeah.
LA has about 30.
Okay, you want to wrap it up, Bob?
Yeah, I want to bring back the jobs to LA, and that's what this is about.
Okay.
We're capable of doing that, and what we need to have a willing partner.
Okay.
And the port is not a willing partner, and we need
Okay.
your help.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Ron.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Appreciate your listening to my comments. I am Ron
You put the
McAleer.
timer back on. Bob?
Yes, it's
Okay.
I'm Ron McAleer, representing MTLA, who has supported Gamble in the development of the market study, market analysis, and supporting them in the business plan. I have over 40 years of experience in the shipbuilding, ship repair industry. I've worked in the shipbuilding, ship repair, ship operations, and as an equipment supplier. And I recently retired from Atlantic Marine in Mobile, Alabama. That was a company I joined in 2003. It was ready to close. The facility was ready to close. It was down in employment. It was down on business. I went there in March '03, and within 3 years, we turned it back to profitability. Within 4 years, we had it up over 1,200 people repairing new construction. So, I mean, my experience says that this is re-energizing the Southwest Marine facility to use it as a space as originally used as an ideal project for industrial development, creating a new market, creating jobs, and creating growth here in the Bay of San Pedro. The facility is a very, very valuable asset, and it cannot be replaced once it's gone. And that's something that everybody needs to realize. The other thing is ship maintenance and repair. It's a very stable and it's a predictable business. Ships, 95% of the transportation of cargo by tonnage coming into and out of the United States is carried by waterborne transportation. All of these ships, in order to operate legally, need to be classified and need to have surveys, dry docking 2 times out of every 5 years. So there's a definite market there, and the industry really has evolved over the years. Right now, this is a high-tech business. We need trade craftsmen and skilled people to be able to provide the services, and there's some good career opportunities right here. So Gamble proposal can directly employ approximately 500 people in repair and an additional 400 to 500 skilled trade craftsmen in new construction and marine fabrication.
You want to wrap it up?
Yes. What we're doing here is we're creating a new market. We're going to continue to compete against Saltzman as we do today. That competition is going to be there. That competition will always be there. But what we are doing is stepping it up to bring a new level, a new market here in the area to create new jobs and job growth.
Thank you. Alan.
Yes, Madam Chairperson. Alan Lurchbacker. I've got 30 years experience in naval ship design, repair, overhaul, and construction. I ran 3 naval shipyards, Charleston, Guam, and here in Long Beach. And then I ran Austell, USA in Mobile, Alabama, right next to Ron's shipyard. So I just met Ron here. We started with 66 people, 0 backlog, 0 sales, and in less than 2 years we grew it to over 1,000 people. The people are here, the work is here, and I'd just like to tell you that we're here to support whatever the city wants. But you see it right there. The people are there, and the work, the naval work, if you have a shipyard, the Navy's going to come here, MSC will come here, and you'll have a viable shipyard with over 1,000 people.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay, let's have Jonathan Kurtz, Will Soholt, Tim Basley, and Ben Resnick. 1 minute each. And then I got Mike Buehler, so whenever whenever Jonathan is done, why doesn't Mike come and take his place?
Okay. Good morning, Jonathan Kurtz, recently retired Navy captain after 27 years. I was asked to assess whether the Navy would be interested and potentially come if there was a shipyard constructed here. What I found was that the Navy is looking for increased competition, particularly on the West Coast and particularly with small business. They're not meeting their goals on the West Coast for small business. There's a lot of concern being thrown out about a 50-mile home port rule. In actuality, the home port rule does not exist for ships of the Military Sea Lift Command, which is basically an entire fleet outside of the active or still active, but the USS. MSC is the USNS flavor of ships. So the opportunities do exist. They're looking for increased competition, and because they don't have home port requirements, they can enter any shipyard that is competitive in their area of operation. And again, the small business piece is extremely important. I confirmed with them yesterday that, yes, they are in fact behind in meeting their requirements.
Right. We had the opportunity to have the honor of participating in the decommissioning of the USS Los Angeles a couple weeks ago at the Port of Los Angeles. Quite impressive ceremony. We actually would like to have that sub retire permanently in its namesake city, Los Angeles. Anyway, okay. Will.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Again, I'm Will Soholt with Cosmont Companies. As we introduced at the last meeting, we are working with Gamble to prepare the business plan and also worked with MTLA and independently to prepare a market analysis. We, as MTLA indicated, find that the market's very strong. Once again, we wanted to highlight the fact that we have been preparing the business plan to date. Our efforts to prepare the plan have been delayed by a lack of information and feedback from the port on various information pertaining to the CDF and the CEQA document and the CEQA process. Those directly affect the inputs in the business plan. However, at this time, given the timing, we're going to go ahead and make assumptions that we need to make to complete a draft business plan. We will submit that under the guise and acknowledgement that it is a draft and is subject to revision based on final input from the port. Additionally, I wanted to comment on the competition with the existing boatyard within the port. Gamble, regardless of what happens with the shipyard, does plan on constructing a dry dock that is 200 feet by 100 feet, which would continue to be in direct competition with the Al Larson Boat Shop. Therefore, the competition with that facility will continue regardless of what happens with this shipyard.
In Long Beach.
In Long Beach.
Oh, I was like, huh?
The existing Long Beach facility.
Okay. All right. Okay.
No, this shipyard is not in
okay.
competition.
Thank you. Tim.
Me again. Tim Basley, Blue Water Design Group, the engineer for Gamble Industries. Since the last meeting here, we've also met with the CSTF, which is the regulatory agency for oversight of the dredging permits and that, and they raised some questions regarding the viability of the open cell system that we talked about. And so we prepared a letter that shows another 4 examples of where this material has been installed and is operating very successfully without any detriments to the water bodies. Also, there was an issue brought up about the containment quantities of the volumes that were to contain. I've also developed over the last 3 or 4 days a new alternative, a new configuration that will allow us to handle 164,000 yards of the unsuitable material plus the material that's generated on site. And the only delta now is about 200,000 yards of other material that's identified that could go to other disposal sites or possibly even LA2. So we are able to contain the entire volume of the unsuitable materials. And lastly, regarding the schedules, we've worked very hard with our engineering team, and we think that with a very tight collaborative process, we could have the engineering done in about 12 weeks, be able to order the materials, then to place the order for the steel, it would arrive about 9 weeks later, so that means about 21 weeks we could be installing the sheet piles, notwithstanding the regulatory side of the process. So we've been trying to pull together.
We're working hard. Right. Thank you. Ben.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Gamble to date has spent over $1 million in assembling one of the finest teams from across the country to work on shipyards, whether it's the business, the technical, the construction. Gamble has done everything it can to meet its obligations under the MOU, and as you heard from Bob, we're rather disappointed that we are not getting the collaboration we thought this project is entitled to. Why do I say that? A year ago, when you pushed this forward, we were talking about 80,000 cubic yards of contaminated sediment that we had to take care of.
Right.
That's the number. We designed for it. We proposed it. Guess what? That doubled on us a couple of weeks ago. Now the port says, no, it's 160,000.
Right.
Well, how do you hit a moving target like that? So we have had some issues with the fact that the port is not being able to help us. For example, we asked for as-built plans of the piers. In order to engineer for the piers, you need to see the plans. They told us they didn't have them. This goes back to last summer. We discovered over the last few weeks that they did have them, and they do exist. And so we finally have the as-built plans. There's no reason for this to operate that way. Here's what we're asking. Simply, the environmental review, when we spoke about this a year ago, was going to be an addendum. It's simple. We are not creating a new project. All we're doing is taking the dirt that the channel deepening EIR analyzed, and we're giving it storage. That's not a new project. There's no need to do a whole extended, complicated environmental review. As for the business, the feasibility, and the project, we suggest maybe you have the Chief Administrative Officer of the city just look at this project, comment on it. They have staff competent to do that. They can comment on the business plan, comment on the marketing plan, and we can resolve that issue once and for all by an independent review, since there seems to be resistance from the port that we have a viable project. So with that, we thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you very much. And Mike Buehler, LA Conservancy.
Good morning, members of the committee. Mike Buehler, Director of Advocacy for the Los Angeles Conservancy. The Conservancy is also a signatory to the MOU regarding between Gamble and the Port and the Conservancy. We continue to believe that Gamble's proposal provides the best opportunity for productive reuse of the buildings that comprise the Southwest Marine Historic District, which has been determined eligible for the National Register. However, with regard to your inquiry today and the status update, we are disappointed that the Conservancy has not been copied on any correspondence pursuant to this MOU to date. The MOU explicitly requires that all communication and notices necessary to implement the MOU be copied to the Conservancy, and we have not received correspondence regarding these ongoing negotiations. The most recent correspondence dated January 25th, of course, has a material impact on the feasibility of the proposed project, and it's absolutely essential, we feel, that we are copied on correspondence moving forward. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Why don't we have the Port staff come up? Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, obviously there was a couple of issues that were brought up, and again, since our last meeting here, we asked that you meet with Gamble, back and forth. We were kind of hoping for, collaboration. We were hoping that it wouldn't just be a letter in response to sort of why it wasn't going to work. We wanted some face-to-face, which I know happened, as well as a letter. Right. That outlines some of your issues. So I don't know if you want to kind of go through some of those main points or what.
Yes, I would. Okay. We did review the written submittals, which came in on December 22nd, right before the holidays. And when we met with this committee in January, we had just begun our review. Right. We told you it would take a few weeks. We would meet with Gamble, and then we would put our remarks in writing.
Right.
And the way we evaluated the engineering report, we evaluated it against the 5 criteria in the MOU. And those 5 criteria were: the design had to accommodate our dredging project, it had to be consistent with our EIR, our dredging project had to stay on schedule, right. It couldn't cost us any more, and it had to meet our structural criteria. Right. So that in itself, those 5 criteria, that's a pretty tall order. And clearly it tells you that we couldn't change our project too much to meet that criteria. If you recall, Councilwoman, when we first entered into the MOU, we had a lot of discussions about the fact that the port's fill was constructed with a rock dike, which is like a pyramid shape, takes up a lot of space, and Gamble was contending that a vertical wall right. would take up a lot less space, and there was more water area for that could be made available. But the object of the MOU was to focus on accommodating our dredging project, not to design a shipyard. The idea was to modify our project in such a way to leave more water area open so that in the future design of a shipyard, you had more different alternative ways you can design it. Right. But that's not actually what happened. The project proposed by Gamble, the design we have now, meets 4 of the 5 criteria. They did meet the structural criteria. It does not accommodate our dredging project. Our landfill was 450,000 cubic yards. All right. They have come in with the concept to handle 80,000 cubic yards of the contaminated sediment, which was our estimate at that time when we started. Right. When we got the final design, it was 160,000 cubic yards of sediment. But in our concept, we had space for 450,000 cubic yards. So there was enough cushion there to deal with the fact that in these types of projects, it's very hard to estimate.
Well, let's just talk about that just for a second, because that was the number that we all talked about. I saw that in this committee, that 80,000. So how did it double? What's the reason for that increase?
Yeah, there were a couple things that happened. First of all, when we do an EIR, we never go to final design. As a matter of fact, you really shouldn't be doing that under CEQA. We always do the final design after the environmental document. So it was an estimate in the EIR, and we went into the MOU with that, knowing that was the estimate. As a result of the final design process, which happened after, we had a revised number from our engineers. In addition, as part of the permitting process, which came after the EIR, the Coastal Commission actually designated an additional 20,000 cubic yards of contaminated that that was, not previously designated as contaminated. That's why in designing these types of projects, you've got to plan for that cushion. And we did that. We had a fill of 450,000 cubic yards.
That's quite off, though. I mean, from 80 to 160, that's like double. Like, it's amazing that your folks really underestimated that much.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the second issues that we have to deal with is the fact that our fill really covered all the contaminated sediment that's in the slips. We don't know really how much is in there. There's an estimate of 46,000 cubic yards. That's an estimate from Gamble, and it's based on going down, a sample down through their design depth. But we suspect that the contaminated sediment goes all the way down in those slips to the natural soil. That's an additional 2 to 7 feet. That's not accounted for in their scheme either. So it's very likely the 46,000 cubic yard number will change to something else that is much larger.
We did hear today from the engineer, though, that they felt like they could accommodate the 160.
Well, basically that's new information that came out at this hearing. We did an evaluation based on what was submitted to us.
Okay.
So we had the issue with not accommodating our dredging project. We basically, as I said, they designed a shipyard. We now have piers. There's contaminated sediment under those piers. In our scheme, the piers were gone. They were demolished, and that material was all covered. But now, their project actually changed. And when you change the project, that means, looking at CEQA again and also getting new permits. And we went with Gamble, another meeting that we had between, since we met last time. We went with them to a meeting of the Contaminated Sediment Task Force. That's all the agencies that come together that have to approve these types of projects. A member of your staff was there. We heard at that meeting that similar projects are taking a year to obtain permits. This would delay our dredging project. And the final factor was the cost. Gamble's cost estimate for dealing with the 80,000 cubic yards is $25 million with no contingency. These types of projects have about a 20% contingency in them. So it's clear to address all of the contaminated material, it's going to cost more than our original budget. Bottom line, the object of the initial effort under the MOU was to focus on how to accommodate our project and minimize the landfill. Really, by looking at the vertical containment wall structure, that would leave us more options going forward for design for a potential future shipyard. We weren't supposed to be designing a shipyard at that time. That in itself creates CEQA issues. Even at the last meeting with the Contaminated Sediment Task Force, the Coastal Commission said we might have to amend our master plan because this was a design for a shipyard. And you might recall when we talked about our master plan amendment, we were working on the MOU. The future land use is designated as other. That gives us the potential for the shipyard or other uses that our board, may want to look at. So, but that's the situation we find ourselves in.
Right.
Now we're down at the 11th, hour. The Army Corps is starting the dredging project at the end of this month. We cannot stop them. We cannot afford to delay them. There are 2 other major port projects under construction, China Shipping and TraPac. We've put hundreds of people to work constructing those projects. They're tied to this dredging project being on schedule. It doesn't mean, if our project goes forward, that our board will not consider a shipyard. We can still look at a shipyard alternative. It's just not going to be the design that Gamble has in this report.
So I was just going to ask that because I think that was pretty clear in the beginning that no one wanted to delay the channel deepening project. So the latest schedule from Army Corps will start work
at the end of February.
Okay, February has how many days this
28
this year?
Yeah.
Okay, so February 28th, they're starting.
I don't know that they said at the end of February. We don't have a precise date, but they intend to issue the notice to proceed to their contractor. We're not constructing it.
So what is your sense? What is your sense of actually when that?
Well, I would say since February 28th is the last date, I would say let's assume that because they said at the end of February.
So they're starting February, and they've given you a schedule?
They have given us, they've just told us when they intend to issue the notice to proceed. They're negotiating with their contractor now.
Okay. I also want to talk about, in your letter, you state that keeping the existing wharves and piers in the slip would require a new environmental analysis, which would delay the channel deepening. Or we're sure that, you were going to pretty much get rid of all that and
Right.
taking into consideration the Conservancy's issue here. Keeping that, I would not assume would create a new reason for EIR as opposed to demolishing it.
Well, that's really based on our legal advice, because there's contaminated sediment in amongst the pilings on those piers, and so they were going to be removed. That material was covered. The Conservancy has, of course, a concern about the buildings, and we had committed to them we would look at adaptive reuse of the buildings in the subsequent EIR for reuse of that site.
So basically, your biggest issue is you don't think that the 160,000 can be accommodated in this vertical.
No, I didn't say that. I
Okay.
said what they
Your biggest
provided
issue
to
is-
us was a scheme that only accommodated 80,000 cubic yards of
Well, that's because that's what was
Right,
given to them in
okay.
the beginning.
Even-
They're only responding, I think, to the information that they had.
Right.
This 160 kind of came later.
Yeah, if they say now we can accommodate your 160,000 cubic yards,
Right.
I would have two more questions for them.
Okay.
What about the uncertainty? You need that cushion for uncertainty. And then we've got the cost issue. We already know that it's going to be more expensive than the rock dike. And that was one of the concerns from our engineers going in. A vertical wall structure is a more extensive structure. It's why we actually went with the rock dike. It took up more space, but it was more affordable.
But there was a sense that the rock dike did sort of prohibit an other use, like a shipyard, since you're getting rid of the two remaining operational slips.
Well, modern shipyards tend to, there is an option for a modern shipyard with a vertical lift structure, as versus the slips where the ships would come in, and the slips, you pollute the sediment when you work in the slips, and so that's why a lot of shipyards use vertical lifts. They lift the ship out of the water. It's not like hanging over the water, and they sort of lift it up and move it over to the land for the for the design.
And
I'm not an expert on ship repair design, but I understand
Right.
there's other ways of actually designing a ship repair facility.
And do
for
you think we would
shipyards.
actually get a good proposal down the line someday?
I really-
that type of a shipyard?
I don't know. I think there's still, we have the market study, and, there are concerns we have about the market. We're, I think until we get past the technical issue, it's, that's kind of a second topic. But I think that was, that was going to be what we worked on with them between now and June, was really on the business
Hey, Ms.
plan.
Hahn, can I ask
Yes,
a couple
yes,
questions?
please.
So you came up with 5 criteria.
Right.
And they passed 4 out of the 5.
No, they passed 1 out of the 5.
1 out of the 5. How off were they on the other 5?
They didn't pass the other. They didn't pass the
All right,
other.
explain
4.
it to me again, because I heard it the other way.
So one was that they had to have.
Did anybody else hear it the other way?
structural-
Okay, all right, so,
I
okay.
heard it the
All right,
other way,
okay.
too.
I thought they were real close, so I thought we
there's
could
5
make this thing.
criteria. They passed 1. They passed 1, which was the structural
Okay.
suitability of the dike.
Okay.
The other one was it couldn't cost us anymore.
Okay,
It
all right,
couldn't
so, all
delay
right,
our
that's a
dredging-
negotiable
Okay,
thing, okay, so we could
All
work
right,
on
okay.
that.
It couldn't delay our dredging project.
Okay, that's
so
the
it had to be
reality.
similar enough. It had to be consistent with the EIR.
Right?
Okay, and let me go back to my points. Structural. Our dredging project had to stay on schedule.
Right,
We
just
couldn't
ask a
expect-
question.
Right.
Any of the representatives who spoke, hold on just a second, Ms. Hunt, I got to ask a question if I could. Can anyone answer that, if there's any commitment? I mean, on the cost factor, yes, if there's a difference, and I know sometimes you do, even at home repair, you open the wall and you know it's going to cost you X, but you find out it costs you Y, so you have that contingency. Can anybody who's proponents of this project answer with authority that they'd have some cushion on that, or is there 25 million? No, on cost. Meaning you have a listing of 25 million, if I hear the report correctly. Is that right, Dr.
Right.
Gantz?
We've never seen a final estimate from
Okay, no, I'm just saying it's 25 million now. So what if it costs you more? Will you come up with a contingency that costs you more? The city can't take the charge. They want to see a partner say they'll take the charge, meaning on this issue here. Anybody want to speak to that? Speak to the microphone if you would, and re-identify yourself if you could. Thank you.
As Mr. Bridwell said, we have never seen the port's complete cost. They've never wanted to discuss that with us. However, our engineers have their assumptions made, and we feel that this additional containment is going to be negligibly more money.
But what if it's another $7 million?
Well,
Can you handle it?
We'll work that out. Yeah.
Okay, so that's a positive. So we're getting some positive.
It won't be anywhere near
here.
that, but we'll work that out.
There seems to be a lot of people in the room, Doctor, who wants to make this happen.
Right.
Okay,
We can make it happen.
I understand that, but also your mission is the overall mission in the long term. This dredging is extremely important too.
Right.
So that takes precedent over this.
Right.
But at the same time, we have to find a way. I see the same argument in my district, which is the Hollywood area, of trying to keep motion pictures and jobs in California. It's an opportunity to try to keep people working here, and that's what I think from our president to our mayor, and I see the mayor's deputy is here, is interested in jobs. Does the mayor support this shipyard? Okay, all right, okay. All right, anybody here with the mayor's office who knows the mayor's position? Because I think it's jobs that are so key here.
Right, right. And I think that the big factor is our
Sorry, Jim,
our
I thought
dredging
you-
project. The best jobs we make in the port are the ones that are associated with our.
I got that, but there's an opportunity.
We are sustainable. Our jobs
I
are
got that.
sustainable.
And do we need to put these people in the same room to try to negotiate?
Well, I think that's clearly that was our instruction last time, was to continue to stay in the same room and try if at all possible. I think that's the sort of the will of the council that I think you're going to hear is there a way to do both? Is there a way to dredge the main channel, continue for good longshore jobs, and is there a way to possibly bring this new industry into the Port of Los Angeles? We're hearing great support from those that would be working to construct it and to then ultimately work on repairing and building these ships. You're hearing the Conservancy that would love to retain it in the way it is. So I think you're hearing. You heard from the Navy, who said this is actually absolutely a viable project. The Navy would be very interested in having this in Los Angeles. So I think you're hearing, and that's your job. That's your job. It's kind of like, can we have clean air and good jobs? You figured it out. Yeah, we can have both. And I think that's all people are asking. Can we have a viable shipyard, and can we move forward with dredging the main channel? It seems to be you're starting to say no. That you don't think that's possible anymore. That's what I'm hearing.
What I'm saying is the purpose of the MOU was to ensure that the dredging project was accommodated, and we created an opportunity for a specific design of a ship repair facility.
Right.
And so we got off on a design of a ship repair facility. That wasn't the purpose of the MOU starting out. It was really to try to minimize the fill, but allow the dredging project to go
but
forward.
you got to remember that the folks that were doing that had a proposal to build a shipyard.
Right.
So it's not like it was a kind of a neutral group saying, let us figure out how to accommodate your fill. I mean, it was for the purpose of building a shipyard.
But there were a lot of alternatives through this process that were more acceptable, that were thrown out through this collaborative process because they didn't, they were not the design that Campbell wanted.
Yeah, you're right. It was what? Wait a second, Ben. Okay. And can you speak a little bit to this? Heard again a few people acting like or perceiving that the staff was not as cooperative as we would have liked to, like not getting information. Can you at least speak to that? Is that what's your sense of that?
Well, when we were here just about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I think everyone was patting everyone else on the back about how collaborative the process had been. So, now we have some differences of in terms of their final submittal. That doesn't erase the fact that we collaborated all the way through this process.
So you're getting information as soon as they ask for it, they're getting it.
When we have information, we have provided. They believe that, we have not, but that has not really been the case, and I verified that with my staff. So there'd be no reason for us to not provide the information here. It just doesn't make sense.
Okay. Bill.
Well,
would you like
good
to-
morning, everybody.
Good morning.
How many in the room here are here for the port issue? Could you raise your hand? Okay, I just want to see the dimension of obviously the issue. The reality is we all know that jobs,
Right.
but more importantly than just the moment jobs, it's long-term jobs. It's jobs that impact us in a positive way in a competitive environment, which is what we're in. Our port's in a competitive environment and shipbuilding is competitive. So for us and for you, it's obviously an opportunity for us that we would like to seize and run with. What are the main reasons for the bit of impatience or frustration about the timing, as you see it at this point?
Well,
because everybody's for it. I mean, if everybody for it, raise your hand. Yeah. So it's like everybody's for it.
Yeah, we have a dredging project that's going to start construction at the end of this month that fills the slips. That dredging project is related to the China shipping terminal and the TraPac terminal. Construction projects that we already have underway. One gets a fill, one takes material. So any risk to the dredging project, and that's why the MOU is written, we can't do anything that will delay the dredging project, jeopardizes those two projects where we've got hundreds of people out there working, constructing those terminal improvements. And that's to facilitate terminal expansion, which facilitates cargo movement, which creates good jobs. So we have that underway. I think everyone agrees we can't delay the dredging project. And from our perspective, there's a lot of different ways you can design a ship repair facility. The goal in the MOU was to minimize the fill, to look at how we can meet these 5 criteria, which are pretty tough. Right. Without doing a whole lot of change into our project design. And so, we had to basically nail that. And what the concept came in was really a concept for their design of the ship repair facility, the shipyard that they would like to build. But secondary were the concerns of the dredging project. And what I'm trying to say is, really, we had to focus on
the concerns of
the dredging project, minimizing the water area as much as possible, but meeting those 5 criteria so that we had more options for how we could design the ship repair facility.
The dredging project will be complete. What's your sensing of that?
Starting is more important.
It's Mike Christensen, Director of Development. It's about 2.5 years project.
A 2.5-year project. So we can't do the other while we're doing that, or can we simultaneously do both without one being destructive to the other?
Yeah.
There's certain things we can do on the shipbuilding process that don't impact the dredging.
Right, but under our MOU, the piers that were there get demolished. As a matter of fact, under our MOU, that could have happened at any time. We could have already done it. They've basically designed their project around those piers, which are one of the first things that gets demolished.
So if we're talking realistic here, because we're all impatient, we obviously are dealing in troubled times, what's your sense of timetables of when we could be here in a kumbaya that we got it going? Just give us a realistic picture. And what can we do, of course, to accelerate it?
I'm not sure I can give you a schedule in terms of when we can come back. I understand that Gamble wants to trigger the dispute resolution part of the MOU, so I guess we will go into that process next.
Speaking of the demolition of the piers, is that at what point does that happen in the channel dredging project?
Well, we believe it's going to be one of the first elements of the actual construction.
So February 28th.
Yeah, and again, we don't have the court. They've just told us they're issuing a notice to proceed. They haven't given us their schedule.
Obviously, that's key to their concept.
Right.
So that would be one of the things I would at least ask, that maybe we don't demolish those piers immediately. Until maybe, are you considering doing that while
You know,
while
I
we go
think
into discussions?
I think, you know, Gamble has to go back to what we were originally talking about when we first started this, which was sort of moving back the dike, looking at a wall, trying to
Right.
get something that works from an engineering standpoint for the same amount of money. That was the answer. We threw that out and went to something else. We didn't throw it out. They threw it out and went to something else.
We all agree, committee, that dredging is number one?
Yes.
Okay. Now, if, let's say this area, and I'm sorry you can't all see that there's a desk between the speakers and the committee. This is the area you got to dredge, let's say. Could we ask them to start at that end and where our area of contention is to be in the latter part of the
Actually,
project?
it's the fill. It's when they take this dirt out, then they got to dump it somewhere. So it's the dumping ground is what we're talking about. How as soon as they start to
Well, then where does it go
dredge,
from?
they got to dump. So that's what we're talking about.
Okay.
Where do they
Council members,
dump
if I could-
the dirt,
If I
Yeah.
could throw something in here again.
so to speak?
One of the very first things we have to do in our dredging program is deal with some of the contaminated sediment. And in order to deal with it, we have to put it in this disposal facility. There is only one confined disposal facility permitted. And so that forces
where?
this to be,
It's in the
in this
slips.
slip.
In right in back into the soil. It all stays. It doesn't pass Gaffey Street. It doesn't go out of the port. It doesn't go to the Central Valley. It doesn't go to Puente. It doesn't go to Eagle Mountain.
No, Councilman, it has to go in that location, and therein lies the challenge on the schedule,
Right.
Councilman Rosendahl, is that we have to have a place for contaminated sediment, or we can't do the dredging. And some of that early dredging is in the berth areas, and those berth areas are the same locations where we hope to receive some larger vessels actually during the course of the channel deepening project itself.
I mean, from my position, and I can't speak for the chair, what we would like, frankly, is a blueprint or show us where there are the obstacle points where we can be helpful. I mean, that's our job, is to assist you any way we can. And if you could, do your best dream sheet, do your worst, do something in between, and say, look, for us, because our goal, obviously, is to be a shipbuilding opportunity as well. I mean, not only do we want 1,000 jobs, we want an ongoing, robust port in a competitive world that's getting more competitive. So,
Right.
so from that standpoint, there's no disagreement. There's a frustration I can sense by everybody.
Right.
So give us a straight skinny of a timetable. Maybe it's a 7-year timetable, a 5-year, that we need to do this first now. And if there's issues that have to be worked out, we got to work them out. We can't let an issue stop the timetable from continuing. That has to be the number one goal, no matter what the problems are. Lawyers, we love lawyers. Half the time they're doing this, but I don't want to stop
Except for
the
Ben.
timetable. Okay? And let us know candidly what obstacles might be along the way in the timetable. And if we can use our forceful commitment, which is the mayor, we got the mayor's guy in the back of the room over there, and the three of
Another
us.
one over here on this side of the room.
Yeah, I mean, we have, obviously the mayor's 100% for it. Obviously, we're 100% for it. So tell us what we can do to help you break through these log jams. And if they're lawyers like this guy, Resnick, we'll sit down with them. We have no problem. We see them all the time. If we can be of value. That's where I'm coming
Right.
from. So
Okay.
from my position, if you came back in a month and say, look, here are the steps. We have a problem here. We maybe have a problem there. What do? We don't want to slow anything down.
Right,
We want
I
to
understand.
accelerate.
No, I know.
That's all.
Oh, yeah, he's not here.
Yeah, the new deputy mayor, his job is jobs,
Yeah, a guy
jobs.
named what?
Austin.
Austin Buechner or whatever.
Well, be respectful there. He's the deputy mayor, Mr. Rosendahl.
I don't care.
All right, okay, I
am
know.
respectful.
But he's on the 13th floor. So I think
Deputy
so.
Austin.
Yeah, right. He could be very helpful in
Okay.
breaking log jams.
All right, Ben, I know you're just.
I know, just
quick,
30
1
seconds.
second.
I just want to point out the MOU
Right.
actually gave us a year of exclusivity on this, and yes, it said that they would not start construction before February 1. Didn't mean they have to. We've asked for a construction schedule. We've never been given one. We don't really know what the construction schedule is for the channel deepening, and I think the committee's direction of saying, why can't we try to coordinate so that
Right.
you can do that and allow this? You see, if the first thing they want to do is demolish the slips, you just lost $25 million worth of slips. You'll never replace them. You'll never get them back again. And it would be a real shame if they took that first step, because it would undermine the rest of the shipyard, and there wouldn't be none. So what we're suggesting is that we do sit down and work those out.
Okay.
You've had a commitment today that our client would pay the cost of the storage. And as and you weren't here, Councilman Rosendahl, before, but the amount of sediments we have to store doubled just a couple of months ago. So we had a moving target. We're trying to engineer for it. We're doing our best. Our client spent over $1 million.
You ever fix your own home? You know, it's a moving target too. You fix a wall, and all of a sudden they say it's costs more. I mean, I understand that problem.
Nature of these projects.
But that's why it requires
But
collaboration.
I will tell you, I mean, for me, they're still at the table.
Right.
They're still at the table. Every time something gets thrown at Gamble, they want to keep working through it. They really, and by the way, when we talk about jobs and investment, this is a lot of money from a private investor coming into the Port of Los Angeles. I mean, this is exactly what we're talking about with private stimulus. I mean, these are private dollars that want to invest in our port to create good jobs and a long-term industry. So, I mean, you can see from our perspective, it seems like it has all the right elements of kind of what we're all talking about in terms of putting people back to work. So we just want to, at this point, again, you've got our commitment that channel deepening is important. I heard it loud and clear from my longshore brothers and sisters that that is an important project to the long-term health of our dock workers. It's important. But we've got this other industry that employs a lot of other good union folks. So we want to know, can we have it all? And it sounds like you're not sure, but I think you're hearing from the public and from the majority of the council that we want to know if we can have it all. So Gamble apparently at this point is asking to start this mediation process that is laid out in the MOU. So that would be my recommendation, that we begin to go into mediation. According to the MOU, my office is the third-party mediator in the MOU, so let's go ahead and start that. Thanks a lot. How did I agree to that? And then on the market study, because there's still a lot of back and forth on, is it viable? Is this something that's going to work in this economy? So can I have the CAO take a look at the market study and business plan and give us their assessment? And then we want to give a shout-out to the mayor.
Right.
Give a shout out to the mayor and the new deputy mayor for economic development, and if at all possible, we'd like to have the mayor take a look at this as well. We're running out of time. We're clearly running out of time. I see that. So if we can, full speed ahead, 24/7. Let's see if we can figure this out. And then ultimately, it's going to be obviously a decision that we need to make whether or not it's going to work.
Do we just hold it in committee?
Yes.
Okay. Could I ask the director of the port, you see that map of the city there? Could you get a nice map of the port here? I was at Papadakis on Saturday, and I understand it a little bit, but I think it would be more helpful, because when you explain, Deputy Director, that it would be helpful so we could look at some of those things.
All right, okay, we'll do that.
Yeah.
Right. We'll hold it in committee, and obviously our next report will probably be on the negotiations and the mediation. Okay, thank you very much.
And again, please let us know where we can help.
Yeah,
okay. All right, I will. Thank you, Council.
I look forward to a conversation with you about it.
It's verbal.
Okay, item 2. So we've got 10 minutes till council. Airports.
Under item 2, the Board of Airport Commissioners submits for council actions the final environmental impact report for the Van Nuys Airport Noisier Aircraft Phase-Out Ordinance, with exemptions for historic aircraft, maintenance and repair of aircraft, and Stage 3 and Stage 4 aircraft. This is also known as Alternative 2 in the draft and final EIRs. Specifically, the council is being asked, 1, to certify that the final environmental impact report, which includes the draft EIR, has been completed in compliance with the California Environmental Quality Act and with the state and city CEQA guidelines, that the EIR was presented to, reviewed by, and considered by the council prior to approving the project, and that the EIR represents the council's independent judgment and analysis. And you are also being asked to adopt the accompanying CEQA findings, the statement of overriding considerations, and the Van Nuys Airport Noisier Aircraft Phase-Out Ordinance, with exemptions for historic, maintenance, Stage 3 and Stage 4 aircraft.
Right.
The city attorney has submitted a report and the ordinance for council review and consideration for adoption.
So basically what we're doing here is we have a clean plane ordinance, or like our clean truck ordinance at the port, and this ordinance would actually phase out the noisiest aircraft at Van Nuys Airport by 2016. It would mainly affect the Stage 2 aircraft, which I guess are the noisier aircraft, but would exempt Stage 3 and 4 since they're quieter, and it would also exempt historical, military, medical, and emergency aircraft. The federal law, Airport Noise and Capacity Act of 1990, banned the Stage 2 aircraft weighing over 75,000 pounds, and this ordinance that we're going to be asked to adopt deals with aircraft under 75,000 pounds. This law also prohibits local governments from instituting their own noise regulations. This ordinance is grandfathered. It was authorized by the Board of Airport Commissioners before that 1990 Airport Noise and Capacity Act was enacted. So, is this a good ordinance, bad ordinance? We know there's some people, I think we've got some opposition to this. Is this really the right time to do this? Is this hurting our economy and jobs? And why should we do this?
Well, it is something that would...
Identify yourself for the record.
Oh, my name is Robert Holden. I'm with Los Angeles World Airports Environmental Services Division, and I've been the project manager of the LAX and Van Nuys Part 161 studies. And this ordinance, LAWA believes, is a good ordinance. It will provide some much-needed noise relief around the San Fernando Valley area. We have taken into account and requested exemptions for heavy maintenance, which would save jobs at the airport. So we do not believe that any jobs would be lost in the short term, probably in the long term as well. We also have exempted...
How many are we talking about? How many aircraft are going to be affected by this phase out?
Well,
I know we're doing it in phases, right?
Yes. It's a step-down phase-out over 7 years.
So in 2011, next year, how many are we talking about?
Next year, we are talking approximately 42 operations per year.
How many?
42 total per year.
Okay, how many in the next phase?
Next year would be 2014. That would be 1,989 aircraft in the year. And in the final year, 2016, it will be 1,886 aircraft. Operations.
So total, operations. What's the difference between an operation and an aircraft?
Well, one aircraft can perform many operations. Each operation, a takeoff and a landing, is considered to be an operation.
Right. I like to think in terms of the aircraft, though. So total, how many aircraft are we saying can no longer fly into Van Nuys?
Well, on a world, I apologize. My name is Ted Baldwin. I'm a noise consultant to the Los Angeles World Airports.
Keep your voice down.
I apologize. Thank you.
Miss Hahn, you're somebody.
Let's use our inside voice.
Well, and isn't that terrible? I'm an acoustical consultant, too. I should know better. Apologize.
I was kidding. Okay, so how many aircraft are we talking about?
Well, there are probably 2,000 of these in the world that would be affected. It's a small, tiny fraction.
Okay.
These are old aircraft that were built 30 to 40 years ago that are being phased out for a lot of reasons.
Okay, and what happens to them? Do they go to other airports? Do other airports have the same ban?
There are a variety of rules at other airports, but very few airports have restrictions like these. We have predicted that there will be on the order of 800 or 900 operations a year diverted to other airports in the area. Many of the operators will be able to substitute quieter aircraft that they already have, or this will actually talk about creating jobs, will induce some of these operators to hush kit their aircraft
Yeah, what is
to
that?
make them quiet.
They can actually retrofit them with something?
That's exactly right. There are a different variety of techniques that can be used to modify these aircraft so they meet these modern noise standards.
All right.
We are talking, when Bob says about 1,800 operations a year, that basically means we're affecting on average about 3 takeoffs and 3 landings a day.
About how many do you have altogether? What's the percentage of the overall air?
Hey, Selena, I apologize.
Good morning.
Hi.
Selena Burke, the manager of the Van Nuys Airport.
Yes.
There are 24 based Stage 2 aircraft at the airport, And as far as a percentage, about 360,000 operations. So when they're talking about 42 and 1,000, it's a very small number as we step down through the years.
Right. Has the FAA weighed in on this?
Yes.
And what are they saying?
They have acknowledged the grandfathering of the ordinance as long as we pass this particular version with the stage 3 and 4 exemptions.
Okay.
And the operators out there know all about this?
They do. This
And
has
the
been-
councilman of the district supports this?
Yes.
Jerry Silver support this?
Yes, he does.
What about the
Okay.
neighborhood? Is the neighborhood?
That's Jerry Silver.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the neighborhood's obviously like this.
Yes, they are
'Cause
very
this has
supportive.
been a
So
problem.
did anybody see the last scene in the 1946 classic, Best Years of Our Lives? The guy goes to all the salvage planes, in there, and then he doesn't have a job. He gets a job. He's leaving the town. He gets the job salvaging the planes. There'll be jobs salvaging these planes. They're not going to just rot. It was on AMC last night. You missed a good one.
Can I ask a
Who
question?
has time to watch?
First thing I
Yeah,
want to
you
know
watched
is,
TV last night?
Late night.
is
It's like
this
late
the
night.
number one
I'm done.
airport in the nation
Not anymore.
for private jets?
We're actually number 2 for
Who's
2009.
number 1?
Deer Valley,
Where's that?
Arizona,
In Arizona. But we're the second in the nation for private jets,
for numbers of operations, yes.
numbers of operations. You got a head saying something different?
No.
No, the gentleman behind.
I think jet operations is actually more in Peterborough.
Okay.
Van Nuys always had more total operations.
Okay, all right, very good, appreciate that. There's a story out in the street that we're not even breaking even at this airport. Is that true?
The traditionally LAX has supported Van Nuys Airport as its reliever general aviation airport. Those numbers are significantly changing. The budget was reduced 24% last year, and I suspect that the numbers that we bring forward at the beginning of next fiscal year will break even or make money.
Make money?
Yes.
Is there ever been any thought about, as an asset value, how much it's worth, and maybe we should sell it in this budget crisis? Is there any thoughts about that?
You guys would have fun together.
As far as selling it, I'm not aware
No,
of it.
about the value of the airport. What is it worth?
That has not
Priceless.
been assessed. Yeah, it has not been assessed.
I see.
I think that's one of the things that we always worry about is our competitive edge, whether it's at the port or our airports. We always are trying to get sort of federal, legislation that would sort of level the playing field on all these. Excuse me, gentlemen, would you like to, take your conversations outside? Is there what's ongoing at the federal level that may address this issue on a larger scale, universal scale?
Yes, there is the FAA Reauthorization Act, which has passed the House and is pending before the Senate. Both versions do contain a nationwide Stage 2 aircraft phase-out. There are some minor differences between the two bills, which would be worked out in reconciliation once the Senate does pass their version of the bill.
Right. Okay, that's good to know because we're usually on the cutting edge here. I mean, we kind of lead the nation, but some would sometimes criticize that as making us, a little bit less competitive. So, before we vote, let's have public comment real quick. Robert Rodine, Maya Zettler, and Jim Bickart. And then we'll. Okay. Are we voting on this? We're voting to recommend to adopt?
Great mustache.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead. Speak now. Jim, were you going to speak? Get on up and get ready. Because we got to go to council. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, council member. My comments were written. I'm Robert Rodine. I'm the principal consultant of the Polaris Group, and I'm aviation co-chair for the Valley Industry and Commerce Association. My comments were written on the expectation that we would have 2 minutes, so
Go ahead.
I have about 1 minute and 45
Keep talking.
seconds. Valley Industry and Commerce Association opposes adoption of the proposed ordinance because the bases for the economic arguments proposed by Lawas consultants are fallacious. Their calculations indicate some 83,000 jet operations by 2014, and that argument is substantially overstated because the forecasted growth in operations was predicated only on market and operational values. It does not take into account the aircraft basing capacity limits at Van Nuys Airport. In 2007, the airport was, at its then jet aircraft basing capacity, when there were 39 to 40,000 operations a year. And that data is based on LAWA noise management. Basing capacity will grow through reallocating approximately 35.6 acres from idle and non-turbine support uses into jet basing. The incremental land will permit basing for approximately 132 turbine aircraft. However, 132 aircraft cannot account for 44,000 incremental operations added, and that would mean an unrealistic increase of 42.5% in the operations activity for each based aircraft. Similarly, it cannot be represented by increased itinerant operations because the airport will also not have land capacity to support those. The issue is if you build out to your maximum capacity and you can only support a portion of the based aircraft when itinerant aircraft come to visit, there isn't any place to service them. The effect of overstating the number of operations is to overstate the economic and noise reduction benefits of a constraint measure because the additional operations translate into phantom incremental savings. Now, there was a comment asked before I came up here. The question was, how many jobs? Mm-hmm. Each of these turbine aircraft that are going to be displaced, and while they are old, that is not like a car gets old. The FAA requires you to keep those aircraft just like they're brand new. They go through airframe and power plant inspections. The avionics are continually updated, and you can't sell a ride to a person who's going to pay $3,000 an hour to be in the plane if it looks bad. So these airplanes are not your old clunkers floating around here. Mm-hmm. These are very respectable business planes. And it takes approximately 5 persons to provide direct support for the aircraft. Mm-hmm. There'll be a pilot, co-pilot, a flight attendant in the back, and probably 2 ground people, line people.
What about these hush kits?
Hush kits are available for certain aircraft. Some aircraft can be hush kitted. The manufacturers of aircraft are not keenly enthusiastic about hush kitting aircraft because they want to sell new planes. But there is, as I understand it, a hush kit that is available for Learjets. I'm not confident that the Gulfstreams that are included are hush kittable because Gulfstream hasn't been cooperative in that process.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your comments. Okay.
Hi, good morning. Maya Zettler here on behalf of VICA, Valley Industry and Commerce Association. We are here representing over 350 businesses in the Valley and the greater San Fernando Valley region. And with all due respect to a neighbor that you had mentioned, we are here representing thousands and thousands and thousands of employers and employees in the San Fernando Valley region. We are here today to express our strong opposition to this motion, and we're asking you to oppose the motion before you today. In addition to the arguments you've heard in terms of the jobs lost here in the San Fernando Valley, we are raising objection because of the Stage 2 ban and the phase-out of these aircraft that are being discussed here today. And I want to tell you why. The proposed regulation that you're looking at should not be treated as if grandfathered. Then Mayor Bradley in 1992 sent a memo to the Board of Airport Commissioners instructing them to rescind all measures relative to the Stage 2 ban. It barred action compliant with the cutoff date for grandfathering. Restrictions proposed before the cutoff date are grandfathered, and thus later restrictions can only be enacted after a Part 161 study is completed and then approved by the FAA.
Go ahead.
The city does not have the capacity to gain the grandfathering necessary for this measure that's before you today without a costly Part 161 study needing to be completed. So we do not believe that the committee is able to support this ban on Stage 2 aircraft on the basis of grandfathering without this Part 161 study, and therefore we're asking you to oppose the measure of phasing out these aircraft. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you coming.
Jim Bickhart, Associate Director of Transportation for Mayor Jobs. Mayor Villaraigosa supports this proposed ordinance and respectfully disagrees with my esteemed colleagues up here today. And he was the one who urged the Los Angeles World Airports to explore and restart what he felt was a grandfathered process, and at the same time conduct the Part 161 study that the my colleague to the left here referred to, and the same documentation that supports the Part 161 study also supports this proposal in terms of economic studies. And
How long does it take to do the Part 161 study?
that's a question for the LAWA people.
Robert Holden, LAWA again. Yeah, we started the Part 161 study in 2005, so it has taken us approximately 5 years, just less than 5 years to get where we are. And that is in keeping with our estimates. They usually take about 3 to 5 years to conduct something, especially as complicated as the one that we had at Van Nuys.
All right. But you're, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, one last comment. So Part 161 application will be submitted to the FAA at some point, I think later this year probably. But in the meantime, the mayor feels like he's keeping a promise to the people of the San Fernando Valley, the majority of the residents.
It's not just one person. I mentioned the guy's name.
Yeah, in pursuing this matter. The other thing, as the staff and consultants pointed out, is that the FAA reauthorization bill includes similar proposals in both the House and the Senate versions pending before the U.S. Senate right now. And I think the basic reality is that this kind of action is inevitable, and in fact will just put the fact that we're going forward with this places the city of Los Angeles at the cutting edge. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to. I'm sorry.
Just wait until the FAA does it. I mean, why do we feel we have to move ahead of them? I'm just curious.
Well, this is a process that we were directed to do by the Board of Airport Commissioners and the mayor. We were directed to do a dual-track process in trying to get rid of these noisier aircraft through both the Part 161 process and the grandfathered phase-out. And the Part 161 process is complete. We've got a draft application ready to go.
As a Valley representative, I appreciate VICA, but I also appreciate, you mentioned Mr. Bradley's effort in '92. If that was done then, we wouldn't have this problem today. I think we have enough time to start this. I believe in the airport department, its managers at Van Nuys, and so I think we should vote yes.
Okay, so basically federal law in 1990 banned stage 2 weighing over 75,000 pounds. And so the idea of this is just to get the ones under 75,000 pounds. So what's the, I'm still not quite sure on the VICA issue.
The issue with respect to Mayor Bradley is that there were 2 ordinances drawn by the city, culminating with Ordinance 17-154 in 1989. And
we gotta go.
There were discussions between Mayor Bradley and Secretary of Transportation Skinner and the people at LAWA.
Get to your point.
And the FAA was saying, don't do this. You may lose your opportunity for federal funding. Mayor Bradley had a study done by Keith Comrie, and the study reported back to the mayor, don't do this. And the mayor sent a memorandum on December 4th, 1992, saying to the Board of Airport Commissioners, don't do it. The argument that Ms. Zutler was making is that by the mayor directing the rescission of all actions prior to that date, he defeated grandfathering. So they don't have the prerogative of grandfathering. They can't do what you're about to look at today. They have to finish the Part 161.
And when will the Part 161 be completed?
Well, actually, the study is complete.
So is it complete or isn't it complete? You keep saying, you guys both act like it hasn't been completed yet.
No. It is complete. It has not been submitted to the FAA. It is not something that is going to be effective in 6 weeks.
So you would be okay with this as long as the Part 161...
we would not be okay with the ban because in the 161 we have an opportunity to object to the analytic processes that are there.
Okay. All right. So you feel like that hasn't happened?
Correct.
Okay. All right. So this is an interesting issue. I will say personally, I'm not convinced on this issue yet. But you have a motion.
I would be moving to approve it based on 1992 is almost 18 years ago, and technology changes, and you have an earmuff, or what do you call it, Janice?
Hush kit.
Hush kit, they'll develop it. They'll do it. If we put pressure on, they'll change the way. We never said, the mayor, Bradley, let's say, was the first one who enlisted us to get low-flow toilets. And Ruth Galaner pushed it. And then finally we did it. We made a difference. So the time has come to make a difference.
Okay.
And I look at the airport staff, and they're working at it. So we can make a difference. I
Okay.
say vote yes. I
All
call
right.
for the question.
Okay.
Madam Chairman, I just would like to add that with respect to the issue that Mr. Rodin
Right.
is raising on Mayor
Right.
Bradley,
Right.
that issue is known to the
Losing
FAA.
everybody.
The correspondence was sent to the FAA. They considered that when considering our grandfathering and still acknowledged our grandfathering. Also, our research of our records shows that, yeah, the board has never rescinded the original
So
resolution.
you think this is just,
So we believe it's still grandfatherable,
Okay.
and the FAA does acknowledge that.
okay. All right. So we have a recommendation to approve this. Do I need to hear from the city attorney?
No, we're just going to have Christine's going to read the recommendation.
Okay.
What you're being asked to do by LAWA and the city attorney is to certify that the final EIR, which includes the draft EIR, has been completed in compliance with CEQA and state and city CEQA guidelines, was presented to, reviewed by, and considered by the council prior to approving the project, and represents the council's independent judgment and analysis. And you're being asked to adopt the accompanying CEQA findings, the statement of overriding considerations, and the Van Nuys Airport Noisier Aircraft Phase-Out Ordinance with exemptions for historic, maintenance activities, Stage 3 and Stage 4 aircraft, Alternative 2 in the EIR.
And emergency aircraft, you didn't mention that.
Yes.
And medical. Yeah, medical.
Those were
Military.
in there.
All government.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So there's a motion to. Okay, so move. You, obviously it's going to go to the full council. You certainly have an opportunity to continue to make your case known.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will attempt to do so.
Okay, good.
The interesting issue is that no attorney has ever opined on the effect of Mayor Bradley's memorandum.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Huh? Oh, adjourn.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you coming. Appreciate you coming.